I want to welcome our audience to this Learn podcast. It is in these podcasts that Learn wants you to meet experts that can help you in your work as school leaders or perhaps partners in the education landscape. The topic for this podcast is learning opportunities and outcomes, and our guest is Shannon Buerk, founder and CEO of Engage to Learn. On the Learn website, you will find on the research page under the COE of Access and the element of learning opportunities and outcomes, research in this area being discussed, along with potential resources to access. Shannon, I want to welcome you to the Learn podcast. It is good to have you here to speak with us about this important topic. And I know you have an extensive research and work background in the area of learning opportunities and outcomes, but would you please share with the audience some of that background and experience?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dave. And I'm just very excited that the Learn group is putting together this work because I think it's so valuable for educators. So thanks for all you're doing for that. In terms of my background and experience, as you know, I started out as a teacher when I was 22, much like you did and others in the field, and learned very quickly in my first teaching role how important it was to create relevant learning opportunities and access for students. I had seniors that year, and they had failed the exit exam 4 or more times, and it was the first year that students could not walk the stage and get a diploma in the state of Texas if they didn't pass the exit exam. So you had seniors that, had passed all the way through school, but they weren't going to get a diploma. That was my first teaching job. So it was a little trial by fire. And so I learned right off the bat from experience, and I did a lot of research then saying, how do I make sure that these students who, have made it through school, but now are not passing this exam, how do I create an opportunity for them to have access to what they need to be able to get their diploma? And so right off the bat, in my teaching experience, I learned about that. And then, as a lifetime educator and going into administration and thinking about that from a systems perspective has been important for me. And then with founding Engage to Learn, it's been one of the bedrocks of our work with, 400 districts. So we've curated a lot of the research around this. How do you create better access? How do you create better outcomes based on not just standardized test scores, not just what you need to graduate, but how do you actually succeed in life? How do we make sure that students are life ready? And so there's so much valuable research out there around this. And I've made it one of my passions and one of my pursuits to really understand everything we can and then put it into practice.
Right. And you've done a tremendous amount of work around this, written numerous articles, even books around this work. But I recognize in the amount of time we have dedicated to this podcast, we can't cover all that research and work that you've done around learning opportunities and outcomes. But would you share with our audience some of the key insights and information about the research and the work that you've done in this area?
Absolutely. And again, it needs to be a bedrock of education. We can't truly say that students are educated unless they've had the opportunity to truly engage in a way that gives them skills for life. And so it's not something that necessarily can be measured in test scores. So I think there's 3 key areas. One area to think about is what you're measuring, because what you measure, we know the saying, you value what you measure, so measure what you value. And in this case, a lot of the measures that we already have out there, of course, are not around the outcomes, the long-term outcomes for learners. They're more around the short-term outcomes of have they processed the curriculum standards? And, are they able to apply those in a multiple choice setting situation? So the first thing in any school system that wants to really value the outcomes for learners that are going to be life-ready skills is to find a way to measure those so that it's something that the system focuses on. And there are curated lots of different already created assessments out there. We've curated those as well to share with districts, all different types of assessments that you can use to measure some of those things. Including obviously the student Gallup poll for engagement, as a starting place. But then you can look at the life ready skills that align to what employers want. And there's several, assessments that will assess their progression on those life ready skills in addition to what they're progressing with the curriculum. So how they're learning and the skills they're acquiring that can be applied in their later life are really important to measure, to be able to. So the first thing is measuring those things and looking at what the measures are that are out there, valuing those. I know school districts that are making that a part of their grading and reporting over time, because, right, if you aren't reporting on it, maybe it's not that important, right? But if you are, then it is. And so, and gathering perceptions of families and teachers and students themselves on these types of outcomes that they've identified. So I think a lot of school districts have something like a learner profile or a graduate profile. And the recommendation from experience and research is take that profile and put it into action, because those profiles are beautiful. They say all these things about what the outcomes are that we want for kids, but until they're measured and a part of the system, then we don't force the system to then create the opportunities for learners to acquire the skills. We say we want them, but we don't have that in place. So first thing is measuring it. Second is, creating, again, a learning environment that is conducive to that. And that's a different type of system, that can't be one size fits all, obviously, because learners aren't able to then make progress on those different outcomes that are aligned to their interests and their passions and their futures, if it's one size fits all. And I love the, Bill Daggett says this, but essentially it's like, if you increase relevance, then you can increase rigor. So it's in a way, you've heard me say this before, but you don't have to sacrifice achievement when you're being innovative about learner outcomes. You can actually have both. And so creating an environment that is conducive to that, to where educators can plan and design experiences around those things and around those outcomes. And then the third thing is, and this is related to the measurement piece, but it's really a first step before that, is building out those skills or those outcomes that this system has decided on as competencies. So as progressive competencies, level competencies that can go right alongside the standards to say, yes, we have these curriculum standards, important, not disregarding those, but here are those life ready skills, or whatever that system wants to term those skills, as outcomes that are competencies that learners can have agency over, set goals on, and make progress towards in their learning. And then being able to align, so that, aligning curriculum, resources, and learning opportunities to those pieces. That's how you create an intentional system around it. I think a lot of educators today are certainly engaging students with their interests, polling students about their interests, and trying to include those in the curriculum. A different way to think about it is to truly actually organize the curriculum around those interests and outcomes, instead of trying to infuse it the other way. So that's that third piece.
Those are very powerful pieces, and I imagine quite a journey for a district to go down to try to get that kind of alignment across those three pieces. But in your experience, if a district wanted to engage in this work, kind of out of the gate, my experience has been you have to be able to share with your internal and external communities some of those kind of positive potential outcomes right out of the gate that kind of get people excited. What would be those things that you would tell a district, hey, be prepared to share this because it'll really help you launch this work?
Well, one of the great things about this type of work is that engaging people in the conversation to even set the outcomes in the first place, like engaging families and folks from different professions in that conversation, is, I think, probably one of the most accessible conversations around education that you can engage your community and parents in. So I do believe, and we've seen it from experience in thousands of situations, where engaging folks in the community to create, to say these are the outcomes we care about, is really important. So that's an important step and a first step. A lot of folks have done that already, which is great. So now it's just taking that set of outcomes and turning it into actionable, something that can be acted on. So I think that's important. I'm reminded of the story of the Metro School. So this was one of Engage to Learn's first engagements with a school district at the almost 12 years ago now. And this was the Metropolitan Schools of Design in Corpus Christi ISD. And these were two campuses, elementary and secondary, that were going to be shut down if they continued in their vein. So they kind of reopened them, and their real focus was on I can't remember what they call them, whatever, the life ready skills, soft skills, I think they called them at that point. Engage the community in coming up with that list, and then made those again a part of reporting, and then designed experiences that created relevance connected to those. And I think that, what was exciting was at the very beginning, just like you're saying, they talked with parents and families about the value of these types of experiences and these types of outcomes, and then engage them in helping to create relevance within the curriculum. And we all want more family engagement. I think it's so important. And this is such a natural way to do it because it's bringing people's professions, their interests, into the classroom and making them a part of that. The results in that particular situation within 1 year, we saw unbelievable gains on the test. They met AYP. They had up to 24 percentage point gains in 1 year for all types of students in every subject area and every student group, including special needs, and engagement increased significantly. And then there's all kinds of anecdotal stories about, like I talked to one particular student, for example, that said, before I was in this environment, my goal was to be like my brother, a drug dealer. That's what I was going to drop out of school at the end of my freshman year when I would turn of age. And now I see that because of the relevance, the way that, that I can have leadership abilities. This was when he was a senior. He was number 2 in his class. He went to Rutgers. He had created like a community, a student youth group community group that was like helping to clean up and recreate different areas of the community that needed renovating and reviving. So it's one of those things I've always said, when you take the power of everything that learners can bring to the table and infuse that into the experiences that learners can have, we can really change the world because they have great ideas too.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's powerful. What you just said, that whole idea of engaging your community around the things that they value, especially as you hear the conversations today in the political atmosphere, that actually helps diffuse that because you're engaging them in things that matter beyond just the curriculum and trying to kind of inspire people through curriculum, which usually doesn't work. So you've done this work a lot. You've done this across the country, frankly.
Yeah.
You've done it with me. But would you share some of those implementation barriers also that you've seen that districts need to be aware of if they're going to go down this pathway of really investing in authentic learning opportunities for kids?
I think it's a really important point because I think everyone agrees that we need, more relevant learning opportunities, more access to those, the outcomes that we're talking about. Everybody agrees on that. Where it falls down, where people don't get beyond, a learner profile or a graduate profile in a plaque on the wall, is in implementation. And frankly, it's because no teacher, including myself or anyone I've ever talked to in teacher prep, learned the competencies to facilitate this type of learner experience. It doesn't happen. And then our typical PD, which is like, okay, well, let's do training for 8 hours or something. That's also not going to help me change my practice over time. So there's a certain set of competencies for the adults, the educators, not just the teachers, but also the campus leaders, the district leaders, and a system that focuses on this. And there has to be ongoing job embedded professional learning and coaching to make those incremental changes in practice that will actually lead to these kinds of experiences for learners. And really, it's a culture shift. So, that's something that impacts the whole system, right? The experiences that the adults have, the experiences that the learners have. It has to be intentional at every layer of the system. However, that sounds really overwhelming. So I will say, to go back to what you said earlier, there are some, there's incremental steps you can take. So you start with a campus, or you start with that engagement piece with your community. You start with, once a year. I mean, you don't want this to just be a every Friday morning kind of thing or whatever, but you start somewhere and begin to make that shift in the culture. And, it's so rewarding for educators to see learners truly engaged, never having to ask the question, why are we doing this?
Yes, exactly. It's rewarding to see the teachers kind of own this kind of process as well. It's very rewarding to see. And I would just emphasize a word you used, and that would be ongoing, right? It's not a training that occurs and then you're done and you just implement the training. It's an ongoing process that I think, leaders have to think about. They have to commit to this as a part of their structure. But
absolutely.
Now, you mentioned obviously Corpus Christi, but are there some other districts that if district leaders who are listening would like to go and see that are doing this kind of work, who would you highlight from your experience?
Well, you mentioned Mesquite, and of course, Mesquite has great things happening in this area. Corpus Christi still has, those schools are still intact that I mentioned. Spring ISD started some of this a while back and is continuing it. Memphis, Shelby County Schools is doing a district-wide initiative around this type of work, including blended learning in the process and engaging students in that work. Bullitt County, Georgia is another one that I would say is a leader in this area. I mean, honestly, I could name about 24. And so maybe we'll put that in the research area
There we
on
go.
the site
Mhm.
so that folks
Right.
can see different places that they can go and see this in action in different places in the country where they may be close to.
Sure. And if a district or partner were interested in that and exploring more deeply into this work specifically, how would they go about contacting you and arranging for a deeper conversation?
Well, so, I mean, obviously our Engage to Learn website, engagetolearn.org, and we have so many blogs, white papers, the results, things that you can see, and free tools and resources that people can use. So that's one way. My LinkedIn or Twitter, I share a lot of things on my LinkedIn and my Twitter. So that's another way. And of course, anyone can, just reach directly out to me, Shannon at engagetolearn.org. So all of those
Wonderful.
ways.
Well, thank you, Shannon, for being a part of this important work of supporting our students in schools. And thank you for your participation in the Learn podcast.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.